Okay, welcome to the Men's Human Rights Discord weekly voice chat. We have these every Saturday about various men's rights related topics. This week's topic is something that is very common and something that is very easy to find. It's misandry on social media. Misandry being sexism against men on social media, and it is absolutely everywhere and absolutely out of control. You may recall the Sarah Drong story 4 years ago, the editor for the New York Times who tweeted about kill all men and how she enjoys being cruel to old white men. And everyone defended her, saying, well, it's okay to be hateful towards men on social media because of the context of patriarchy. More or less. That's kind of overly generalizing it, but that's more or less what they were saying. Because the sexism is directed towards men, it's therefore okay because, well, we say it is. Because feminists have decided that patriarchy exists and therefore sexism against men isn't real. Therefore, it's perfectly fine for an editor for the New York Times to tweet, kill all men, and you're a sexist yourself if you complain about it. Reddit, I find to be increasingly misandristic. And it's strange because people are both becoming more aware of men's issues on Reddit, but at the same time, I'm seeing the hostility against men increase more and more with each passing month. The 2X chromosome subreddit, in particular, there was a post on the men's rights subreddit, I think last week, where they found 15 of the top 20 current threads, current posts, were complaining about men in some way or another. 15 out of 20, 75%. So this is an open talk. Feel free to speak about really anything that you've seen on social media or your experiences or your thoughts or something that you've seen or why you think this is happening and what you think we can do about it, how you would address this issue, what you think the causes are. And I'm sure pretty much everyone here has experienced it at some point or another, especially if you identify as an MRA. It's almost a given that you'll be attacked at some point. So, anyway, I'm going to open the floor. Would anyone like to add anything?
Yeah, I think the most obvious thing to add is that part of this is how online spaces are constructed. If in fact it may be the major part of the issue is that online spaces are a collection of echo chambers, and quite often a website will reinforce one of those echo chambers. Usually, the feminist sort of everything, basically the woke side, all that sort of stuff, and they will essentially magnify that content while treating all other content as hate speech. That means that people who are feminists, people who are like in this sort of ideological group that tends to be the most responsible for hatred against men online, they don't get any blowback. Blowback against them is suppressed, especially on places like Reddit, where feminist moderators protect feminist spaces and remove harmful studies and harmful facts that undermine the feminist narrative. I don't know if you can tell if I'm being sarcastic or not, but and they will basically clean up anything inconvenient. I mean, okay, there are some trolls as well. I mean, there are MRAs who go on feminist spaces and put up giant pornographic Ashy 2 images composed of lettering, where you'll have like a giant wing wang on there and stuff like that. I've seen that. But at the same time, they also remove normal conversation, and they do so under the same guise. They lump people who cover their spaces with genitalia, which you shouldn't do, in with people who post facts and so on their spaces. And I think that the people they hate the most are the ones who post the facts, because there is nothing that damages feminism more than reality.
Well, that's why the
This is
Blue
an
Orange.
ideology.
That's exactly why my Reddit account was nuked. Blue Orange 22 user Blue Orange 22 on Reddit. They have still years later never given me an explanation as to why my account was suspended. I never broke any rules. I didn't get any warnings. I didn't get any suspensions of any kind. It just said you have been permanently banned. There is no explanation given as to why. And yeah, you're right. I've noticed too that when I try and make a new account and I go on the default subreddits and I start talking about men's rights, I seem to get shadow bans much more quickly than people who are, let's say, less sophisticated in the presentation. And it's because a more sophisticated presentation is more threatening because it comes across better to someone reading it. And therefore it makes MRAs look like, oh, they're educated in these topics. They know what they're talking about in these topics. They seem rational and they seem reasonable, and they can't have that. And I also suspect they've done that to my YouTube channel because I average less views now with 1,000 subscribers than I did when I had 200 subscribers. How can that be possible? Logically, doesn't make any sense.
Well, YouTube has just released a new policy regarding unfortunate facts, I should say. The policy is targeting quote unquote misinformation. But as we all know, misinformation is anything which contradicts the narrative. And we all know that this extends into the political sphere. That's outside of our range, so we won't go into that. But I'm sure you can all think of things in politics that have been suppressed. I will keep the topic on gender though, and I'll bring up how if you look online for news stories regarding horrific deaths, you will mostly come across articles about women and girls, and the most attention per article, per story, is given to women and girls. A man might have one small mention if he's horribly murdered. A woman might have hundreds. And unfortunate as it is to say, a white woman will have the most, especially if she's pretty. This is a documented effect called the what was it? It's not the Woman of Wonderful effect. It's the missing white girl syndrome. That's it. It's if you Google missing white woman syndrome or missing white girl syndrome, you'll come across like studies showing that if you are a missing white girl, you will get much more attention than a missing white man, a missing black man, or any other race of man. And you will get more attention than a missing black woman. But if you're a child, that can help. If you're a missing child, you get more attention. But again, if you're pretty, you're blonde, and you're a girl, you get way, way more attention. This is why Madeleine McCann is still in the news decades later, whereas like boys who've been abducted and murdered or whatever tend to fade out pretty quickly. One of the few exceptions is Jamie Bolger, and that was, I think, mostly because he was killed by other boys, like children. And I think that is what made Jamie Bolger into a national icon. You have to be exceptional in some way if you are not pretty, young, white and female. So it's not particularly. This is why you will see on news articles they say people instead of men when the majority of victims are male. If you look at genocide articles especially, you will often right at the bottom find some little line, most of the victims were male. If you Google the phrase most of the victims are male, you will come across some very, very interesting things, especially if you put quote marks around it. And if you type in the word genocide after the quote marks, don't put that in the quote marks. But It's very, very interesting. You will get, we have genocide studies on the website, on the citations list, and they basically are filled with pictures of women, but they admit that most of the victims are male and that genocide, quote unquote, affects women differently. As in, you have non-killing forms of genocide, which seems to be a redefinition of the word to me. Those seem to be more on the along the lines of crimes against humanity rather than actual. Like you can argue they're part of the genocide event, but you
Non-killing
get what I mean.
genocide. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, they literally say that in one of our uh, sources on the citations list. It's one of the ones near the top, I think. And we're going to do an article on this at some point. But essentially, they will remove uh, any mention of men. Like you go onto a study, and they will often actively try to hide who in the study was a male victim. So if you've got domestic violence and things like that, they'll hide victim. Like a classic example of this is the Centre of Disease Prevention studies on rape, where they move um, made to penetrate rapes, which is rape of a man by a woman, into a special category which is counted as sexual assault, which makes it so that that category essentially vanishes. This is well known within our community. It's extremely famous. But this is the sort of thing they do on social media all the time. They filter information. They block particular studies and links. Facebook is notorious for this. Facebook is it runs constant information management schemes, I'll say, where they will target a particular group of correct information and say this information is dangerous and remove it. And they will often cite it as being Russian propaganda or something like that, even though it will come out later in normal news sources. But this is essentially why we need to regulate big tech, or rather, we need to set it up so that all big tech platforms are considered part of the public square, and their algorithm has to have its variables known to the public.
Yeah, to that effect, I'd almost say less regulation than more regulation at this point, unless you know that regulation is going to be fair and impartial. Which, as we know,
Yes, well,
which is not what we get at all. Quite the opposite.
unfortunately, the government's out of touch, and the tech companies are very, very rich, and so the boat has been missed on this. So,
I don't think
this
the government.
partly results.
I don't think the government's out of touch. I think the government's largely complicit.
Oh, it's complicit to a large degree now, but for a long time it's been incredibly out of touch regarding big tech and so on and so forth. And so we've had many different governments who've just basically ignored what they're doing. Now they are actually, we've seen FBI going directly to Facebook and people like that and saying, please censor this information. And they're going, okay. But this is essentially, in our field, creating a space where hatred of men is normalized and hatred of women is exceptionalized and hated in itself, which is good on the one side. But on the other side, where they normalize the hatred of men, that is hypocritical and it's incredibly bad. And it is creating teen suicides. I mean, they talk about violent speech all of the time, but they don't care about this speech because feminist academia has created a large number of loopholes that they can exploit in order to say that their speech is fine. So they will say that they hate men, but their hatred is responsive. It's self-defense against men's hatred of women. They hate men, but it's not systemic, even though it's literally a product of the academic system. They hate men, but it's just punching up. That's the sort of thing they'll say. And it it quickly, you quickly get a sense that what they actually mean is that men are a faceless, monolithic father figure, and they are essentially young, naughty children who are rebelling against that father figure, and they're saying, "Yeah, yeah, I don't need you, Dad." But then, of course, they'll go crying to Dad. It's kind of really, I mean, fill in your own adjective there.
Jorp, would you like to say something? These are open talks, so anyone's allowed to speak if they wish.
Oh no, I just wasn't trying to interject myself. I might add something at some point. I'm sorry.
Okay, anytime, really, anytime. We actually, me and Ma always do most of the talking, but that's actually not what we want. We would prefer to be doing the least amount of talking and have you guys talk. And every week, we're always hoping people will speak up. We had someone come in, Acid Katrina or Katrina, I think, yeah, was her name, who came out of nowhere, had never talked on the server before, and was absolutely incredible. So stars have been born in these weekly chats. So,
Well, all right.
if I can ask you, Jorp, do you have Twitter, Facebook, all that?
I don't use Facebook. I do have a Twitter though.
Okay.
If you want me to give you my Twitter handle, I can.
No, that's fine. I mean, if you want to, but you don't have to. But let me ask you: do you ever post men's rights related tweets?
I haven't really tweeted much about that, but it's not that I wouldn't. I just don't have nobody follows me on Twitter.
Yeah. Would you say, because I would say yes to the following question. I would say that if you casually browse Twitter, it's only a matter of time before you come across some casual misandry in some form.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. No,
And
okay.
since they
Sorry, say what you gonna say.
Go on.
Were you gonna say something? Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
Okay. One thing I do want to add that is actually kind of the reason why I specifically came to this Discord server is an experience I've had where most of my interaction with discussions about gender-related issues on the internet have been exclusively in trans spaces in the last several years probably, and it was there was this extreme shock when I stepped out of that and looked at a mainstream feminist space, and because I don't feel like you see casual misandry really in trans spaces. I don't see it, but just seeing it suddenly jump out at me was kind of insane.
Okay, now that's very interesting. So you're saying that you were kind of staying away from mainstream feminist spaces, but then you kind of went into mainstream feminist spaces, and it was almost overwhelming how much casual misandry you encountered.
Absolutely.
And were you self-identifying as a feminist at this time?
I honestly don't know how I feel about that word. I don't want to say it barely fucking means anything, but I mean I don't know, it definitely made me think, maybe not. I don't know.
Okay. You identify as an MRA at the time?
Probably not.
Do you think that seeing the misandry within these feminist spaces maybe pushed you towards the men's rights movement?
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a point that I make all the time. Feminists wonder why anti-feminism exists, but then they defend someone who tweets "kill all men." How do you expect young men to feel about that? How do you expect young men to not become anti-feminist when you constantly say bad things about them or defend people who do, other people who do? There's a real arrogance and real entitlement to thinking that you deserve so much monopoly over the narrative. You can engage in blatant hate speech, violent hate speech against a group, and still demand and even expect that group to support you. Then express surprise when they don't, and then accuse them of being misogynistic when they don't. The arrogance of that is mind blowing.
Yeah, this
Well,
sorry.
I was just going to say it's because they don't see what you're saying as a truth claim. They don't see what they're saying as a truth either. What they see it as is a story that they're telling themselves, essentially. They're telling a story, and that story is quote unquote real for me. And it's basically a postmodern thing where facts aren't really real. They're more sort of claims of authority. So if you claim to be telling the truth, you are claiming authority over somebody who disagrees with you. And it's basically a caste system of truth, to radically misuse the word truth, which they do. It's basically they see narrative as not, well, they see reality as being more mental than physical, essentially. So the reality it's very difficult to understand because it's not internally consistent even. So it's more a case of might make than anything else, which is probably the easiest way to say it. Something that's coming back quite strongly. It's this idea that truth isn't really real because for the longest time we've had this idea that truth is absolute, like facts are immutable, individable, they are what they are. But then you come along these Marxists and they think that truth is power and what you say is an attack on their power. It dates back to honor culture, where essentially if you say something rude to somebody, you're attacking their honor. This is me saying the same sort of reiterating what I said before with the tribalism. It's essentially, if you look back at those cultures, those really ancient cultures, you will find that the king cannot be insulted, because to insult the honor of the king is to call his honor into question, and to do that invites death, because to restore the king's honor he must kill you, because you are saying things that attack his ego. You have to, like, it's a psychology that we overcame, I think, in most part, not entirely, but in most part through a lot of our recent history, but it's back with a vengeance now. You are free to disagree with me if you like, but honestly, I don't think you, like, the word religion is really even appropriate, because the cults of personality in Nazi Germany, in Soviet Russia, in China, and so on and so forth, in North Korea, they replace religion. The idea is that you destroy religion and then you take its place in society and you become like monolithic in a sense. And this is the old position of the king. It's not a new idea.
Well, destroying all other religions is often a part of religion, so I don't necessarily see how that makes it less religious. But
Well, there aren't really as many examples as people think of that, though it does exist. But essentially, what's happening here is something which some religious people do, which dates back beyond religion and is something that secular society is way, way, way more guilty of. But I think we're getting off of topic here, honestly.
not sure, yeah.
I mean, it's the sort of thing where you start to lose what the word religion means. But I'm going to have to edit this section out, I think, because we're way off topic. But like to get back onto topic, misandry shirts, male tears mugs, they were a major thing for a while. And the idea is that you insult men online and then you drink out of your little male's tears mug and say, what you gonna do about it, haters? And then you, if they attack you for it, you go, the bad men, see, I was right. And you, it's called cry bullying. And it's also something that was done in like Soviet Union and so forth.
And these same people believe that if you say a slur in any context, you're a bad person.
Oh yeah, they do, except for the slurs that they've set up, which you're allowed to say because they're okay and they're freeing
slurs,
and
though.
they make things better. Yeah, those aren't slurs because they're not systemic. That's the thing that they'll say. It's not systemic. It's punching up. It's stuff like that. That shirt there. Boys are stupid. Throw rocks at them. I mean, that's punching up these people.
Yeah, it's pretty. If you ever read a debate, follow an argument over the boys are stupid, throw rocks at them. The willingness with which feminists are able to so casually brush off violence against children, because inevitably someone will say, if enough girls wear these shirts, and keep in mind, children 7 and 8 years old, they make questionable decisions, and sometimes they do things because they think they're funny without really thinking them, through. So I could definitely see, young children actually throwing rocks at boys, and a rock hitting a boy in the head and causing an injury. And I could see that happening. And if you bring this up to feminists, it's unbelievable how little they care about it.
Kind of shows how a lot of the things that they say are performative.
Oh, almost everything they say is performative. The entire construction of feminist theory is buzzwords such as systemic, such as intersectional, such as dynamics of power. So they can constantly improvise a position on the spot, and they can perform around any position they need to always have the high grounds and never concede an inch. They can always twist. And then notice how the words that they use are always so abstract, systemic. What does that mean? Privileged. What does that mean? Oppression. What does that? There's so many ways to interpret feminist theory, and they do interpret it to their will, whatever's convenient at the time. And when it comes to social media and misandry on social media, they have an endless list of buzzwords they can pull out to defend blatant hate speech.
One thing I'm just going to very quickly point out is TikTok have actually now started banning anti-male hashtags. So Cam has been banned. I hate all
good.
men, and its derivative, which was I hate all men. So you obviously just replace the
What was that first
one? Cam, K-A-M, kill all men.
What the fuck, man?
And what's interesting, we lived in a society where men really were privileged and we really did have a patriarchy. Kill all women would have been the hashtag to go viral and become very popular. It didn't. I've never seen kill all women really anywhere in any serious number. So why is it that kill all men is the hashtag that became popular?
Well, there was also the thing during COVID, wasn't there, with Clementine Ford, when she turned around and tweeted, seriously, COVID isn't killing men fast enough.
I remember that one too. And she's still on Twitter, she's still verified, and people will still defend her and still support her.
Yep. But as I say, I think TikTok is possibly the first one, the social media apps to start banning the use of anti-male hashtags for videos. There are still some out there, but they're getting there. I mean, misandry isn't real is another one. That's feminists using some really weird logic to I can't remember the word I want to use now, to basically make their own bigotry not look like bigotry, if you see what I mean. I think our anti-hate subs has us down as a hate group, doesn't it? Am I right in thinking that?
A lot of those sorts of subs ping us as one of those, and then they'll go on our sub and they will go into old posts. They will post something atrocious, take screenshots of it, and then run back to their sub to post about it before the original comment can be destroyed and deleted. But they are, yeah, they're kind of this. It's the same thing. They will pick up on stuff that they simply disagree with on the site, but by and large, they, there is sort of group blame. It's quite, yeah, group blame is something that is essentially being encouraged online quite a lot. As we are further and further divided as a culture, more and more tribes emerge, and you end up having to identify with one or more of them. And if you identify with, multiple ones that come into conflict, then you're kind of in trouble. It's a culture of not speaking out. It's a culture where such as words can be met with violence. It's I think why essentially peaceful society in the West is pretty much declining. Is divisions between right and left, pro and anti, whatever. It's all of this sort of tribalism, and then you become. In a way, we're one of those tribes. We try to make sure we're as factual as possible, but as far as feminism is concerned, we are a competition. We are competing for, a space in the web of ideas, and if we manage to win that, then we are essentially defeating their ideology. We are, attacking their narrative, and they can't handle that because their narrative is all they have. It's the source of all of their power, except for gynocentrism, which is what it's all built on.
There's a funny little thing actually about these male tears coffee mugs that keep showing pictures of. I don't know how and when it happened, but the definition of what male tears meant was changed to mean something far naughtier than the liquid that comes out of your eyes. Which
let's not go into that area.
that's why I was trying to not go too far into it. But yeah,
That's funny.
it was changed, and you stopped seeing quite so many people using the male tears coffee mugs and what have you. Which that kind of stuff is just amusing, if you ask me.
That sounds like a 4chan counter narrative. What's the word? Operation, as it were. So they're fighting ideas with ideas. They did this sort of thing where they made the okay gesture racist, just by joking. They going onto Twitter and places like that, and having fake accounts tweet that it was racist and it was a sign of racial supremacy, basically. And yeah,
Dude, remember Pepe?
The Lee Pew or someone else?
Oh, the frog. Pepe the frog.
Oh, yeah, that one.
It was meant to be the alt-right, wasn't it? I think
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny because like now that that's like that like narrative is over, people on the left use Pepe again. So it's like I don't even fucking like know what to make with it.
Well, they're not consistent because they don't have to be. They're not operating that sort of sense. 1 month being Asian is a white privilege. Another month, Asians are an abused minority. It changes from day to day. You've just got to be honest. I think that in large part it's in large part it is a reaction to news events and things like that. But it's also, I think, a shit test. So
Mm.
just to see how fast you can change with the narrative. So if you can't keep up, then you're not a good NPC.
It's also when you've constructed something off a falsehood, and it's very difficult for it to remain consistent as news changes, as trends change. So none of these ideals are really built on anything real. Like there's no real solid foundation. And so there's no reason why it wouldn't change month to month.
Well, I've seen on Twitter this afternoon another narrative that's slowly gathering steam about men's rights activists, and that is that we're all transphobic. And Ma, as you spend quite a lot of time on that platform, I'll give you 3 guesses which anti-MRA troll account is behind that little one.
Oh yeah, I don't even have to guess. The yellow one. I won't say their name.
No, yeah, but they are behind it. Yeah,
Oh.
they are behind it as per usual.
Oh, okay. Sorry, because my next guess was going to be one of those feminist doctors who have a master's in basket weaving or whatever.
Just for the sake of those listening, who is the yellow one?
Just for the sake of everyone listening, I'd rather not mention the yellow one. You know who I mean, I'm pretty sure, because
Of course.
but the muscle flexy yellow one. But let's not mention them by name because they thrive on like all this sort of negative attention.
Yeah,
I think you give him too much credit.
I'm pretty sure the guy's a narcissist, so that means
no doubt
that
he's a sociopath.
Mm.
No,
he very much gets off on this.
Every time we would get into it on Twitter, he would fold so quickly, and he would always have to fall back on either memes or petty insults. He can't hold an argument for more than 2-3 replies in, and he's already off the rails.
yes.
Jan.
He's
Yes, Jan.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that one. He's at the end of the day, he's another misandrist. He obviously thinks that playing that particular game is going to get him somewhere. He's going to.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, or kind of ask in general, do you think people like that, do you think those are genuine beliefs, or do you think it's all a show for an ulterior motive?
Both.
I think that there is an issue here where I said this earlier in the text chat, but like what you're saying becomes less important than how it looks for you to say it. You know, I'm sorry. Are you called Ma? M-A-H? I'm sorry. I don't know how to refer to you.
It's fine. Everyone goes through this.
Okay. But Brain, you were talking about a lot of this like narrative versus narrative stuff, and I feel like what a lot of that like amounts to like tangibly are situations where it's just like rather than having any like cognitive processing of a question, people are just parsing whether or not something something sounds like it fits with their ideology or if it fits with the like opposition to it, and I don't know. It's just that wasn't as well formulated as I wanted it to be in my head, but
it's all right. It's tribalistic flag waving. It's I mean, I'm sure you've all seen that meme I support current thing. The thing about this is there's always going to be a large proportion of the population who will just go along with whatever is said by the media as a mass. And they will,
Absolutely.
especially as their media diet tends to be restricted by design. I think we are seeing some progress on that. What the takeover of CNN recently. So slowly, their really obnoxious voices are being filtered out, and they seem to be heading back towards a neutral stance, which is good. But basically, yeah, it's that same tribalistic honor culture thing. Like, if you are not with us, you are a traitor to the cause, you're against us, you must be purged, or you must be destroyed, or you must be corrected. And this is the pattern we see throughout cultures, throughout the ages. You'll be destroyed, you will be corrected, or you will be exiled. And that's and during a lot of our history, being exiled was death. And this is has created around the world a lot of cultures which are very groupthink, where people will simply, um, you know, like go along with everything because historically people who didn't go along with everything died. And sometimes this is because natural disasters, everyone has to run the right way. Sometimes it's other stuff, but a lot of the time it's ideological control. Blue's favorite phrase, Maloo control, which is something we're seeing across all social media networks. So while they have new tools, what they are doing is as old as bricks. Yeah, no, it's older. It's way older. It's something Paleolithic. It's or even earlier. It's follow me. I am, in the right. Uh, Everyone else is in the wrong. Uh, the leader is the tribe. If the leader falls, the tribe must like bring about a new leader, or the tribe will fall. It's this sort of stuff. It's very, very baseline, hit somebody over the head with a stick sort of stuff. This is why they go silent and they run away instead of admitting defeat. It's something you see from every single ideological group. This is without exception. When somebody is defeated, they will often run away. But what they're doing is they are ramping this up and they are creating this atmosphere of this. So they're taking something which is merely a human tendency and they are building it into the society instead of fighting it. And so instead of building sound, basically thinking methods, critical thinking, and so on and so forth, people form along tribes, they attack other tribes, and those tribes who have the most power over the platforms dominate, and thus they become more and more extreme. They become more and more immune to the facts until their power can be toppled, or they come into contact with some other group. We're seeing something very similar right now of Chinese nationalism. It's it's very, very wide reaching, this idea that there are facts and then there are essentially counterfacts which say the opposite, and that these facts are at war and the strongest person is the person with the strongest facts rather than the person who is right. It's it's more ingrained in us than people think.
Here's a question. Do you think in the last few years, misandry on social media has gotten better or worse?
I feel like
Both at the same time.
I feel like it got better from like 2016 to 2018, like that time period was really good. But then, like from then until now, it's like slowly been becoming terrible.
Go on in, Blue.
I
Elaborate.
was gonna let me just first ask. You think 2016 to 2018 was a good time?
I think that it was terrible in 2016, and by 2018, people had really become a lot better.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I would agree. 2017 was the worst. 2014 and 2017 was really when it was at its worst.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But I feel like around 2018 and 2019, people were acting a lot better. But there's been like I feel like there's been a shift in the worst direction again.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's because the people who were doing this earlier on and now in the media, I think, and they've basically taken over the media, and they are propagating this sort of thing.
I think it's the new generation of shitheads.
Well, I do think that the fight back is growing. People aren't willing to put up with it anymore, and hopefully we're going to break through into a sort of a better space rather than swinging all the way over to some other extreme.
Go on, Blue. Do you want to elaborate on your answer?
I agree with Ma. When I say it's getting better and worse, it's getting better for the reasons that Ma just said. More and more people every day are becoming pro men's rights. I think it's also becoming worse because then the resistance to the men's rights movement is growing as well, and feminists are becoming, I think, more sophisticated in their arguments because now they have to be, because they'll actually face scrutiny now, and people won't accept domestic violence against men as readily. But the counterside to that is look at what almost happened in the UK in 2020 with the domestic abuse bill. That came very close to passing. Look at what almost happened in 2016, the push to close all women's prisons. We're going to see feminism get more and more extreme as it gets more and more desperate and more aware, and it no longer has the monopoly that it's been used to for most of its existence.
Well, the good thing about that is it's going to come a lot more obvious, I think, because people who are panicking don't make the best decisions. They are, I think, being a lot more subtle about it online, at least. It used to be that they would state their position outright as a fact. Nowadays, they more sort of hedge it a little bit. You'll get feminists admitting that the pay gap is largely because of things that women are doing, but they'll still blame men for forcing them to do them. They'll blame patriarchy and stuff. I don't know if the how sophisticated their arguments are going to get, but I do know that their main and best argument is simply to go to children on children's TV and on YouTube and into their content and their books and all of that stuff, and their games especially, and just splurge their ideology all over it so that that ideology is accepted because it's everywhere and it becomes common knowledge and it becomes unquestionable. And so people are like, yeah, this is just what everybody knows. And you've seen this in, like, not a lot of people keep track of this sort of stuff happening in cartoons, but I think we should, because this is stuff that's happening. This is them preaching to little kids about what they should think, basically. And what we should be doing is we should be getting into these same spaces and preaching equality. So we need to counter their message. In a certain sense, we need to fight their game a little bit by shouting louder, which is what ideological conflicts often are. We have to get into books, we have to get into TV, and especially we have to get into academia.
We'd be resisted fiercely if we tried to get into academia.
Oh yeah, that's why new male studies and other such things are being set up to skirt around gender studies and create a new system of thought related to gender, which is much more equality focused. So look up new male studies and the Centre for Male Psychology, I think, and all these places, and just keep your fingers crossed that they don't get infected by feminists. Because that's what feminists do, they infect things.
Here you are, here's a prime example for you. The Quartering's actually a very, very good YouTube channel, if anyone's not aware of it. It's sort of social commentary and what have you around particularly gaming and movies. But this is another version of misandry, this time in wider media. And that's, this TV series is currently bombing worse than we ever did to the Germans. And they're not happy about it, so they're saying all the men that are against the series are just incels. Just another form of misandry.
So this is honor-based culture again. What they're doing is they are saving face, which is a specific term. It's not just a phrase. Saving face, your face is your public appearance. And in this sense, public appearance is much more important than public reality. And what they are doing is they are preemptively striking against people who think their series is bad by labeling them trolls, incels, racists, sexists, all this sort of stuff. And then they've got this all queued up before the thing even launches, its trailer is even announced. And then boom, it's all over everywhere. And it's like, oh, you're criticizing it, you're just one of those haters. And this is what they do. They will save their face, their public appearance, by destroying yours, by attacking your public appearance. It's an honor challenge, essentially. Seriously, if you're an MRA and you haven't looked into honor culture and caste systems, I strongly recommend it. And also the Maoist Red Army student purges, that sort of stuff. It is spooky how close it is to our current culture.
I use the Call for Revolution and Maoism and the Red Guards as an example all the time. The caste system is interesting. It would kind of reflect their view of intersectionality. White, straight, cis males being at the absolute bottom and progressively moving up. Do you think in the feminist hierarchy or in the feminist caste system are white women or black men the lower caste?
Ooh, that's a tough one, isn't it?
I think when you look at, forget about just what they say, but when you look at what they actually do, they cause great harm to black males and do nothing but help white women for the most part.
I agree. I was going to say, I think it's absolutely, the narrative is probably that would be white women, but the reality would probably be those black men. But that would probably depend on who you ask.
To save face, they would probably say that they support all minorities and stuff like that, and then they would go on a spiel about black women.
That is extremely accurate.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what they would. They would say, "Oh, notice how even within the black sphere, men are still infected by patriarchy and toxic masculinity and trying to make it all about men," and then they would segue into the next point, next tangent.
Yeah. You see, what people don't realize, even in our community, is that they are segueing towards concepts like gay male privilege, black male privilege, this sort of stuff. They've been testing the waters for a little while now, and the route in through which they'll do this is trans rights. And so they will essentially say that gay men are monopolizing pride, even though they started it. And they will basically, we've already seen examples of Pride being protested. This was a while back. It was probably them testing the waters. I can't remember where I have the link to it, but they essentially ran out in front of the Pride parade protesting them for being exclusionary. And this is kind of crazy talk because you can kind of just show up as anything at Pride. Like, as long as it's quirky and weird, they'll just basically let you in. It's there's not really a big gate there.
Yeah, what was the basis for them saying that?
Well, they say that gay pride excludes trans people.
But they don't.
No.
If I went there, they'd let me.
Yeah. Yeah, they'd let anyone in, basically. I think they even, most of them let in straight allies as well. Like, if you wanted to get a big flag and say Gay Straight Alliance or something like that and march with them, they'd let you in. Like, they're kind of like, yeah, sure. It's not a big deal to them. But we have this stuff because they want to set up this narrative where gay men are the patriarchy, essentially, and they are oppressing trans people. And it does get into some, like, this is you diving down through the ideological levels. This is taking steps deeper and deeper into the mystery cult, essentially. What you're doing is navigating through what are layers of ideological statements. And so right at the outside, you get everyone should be equal. And then you go in a layer and it's like, but women are oppressed by men. So maybe we should lift women up. And then you go in a layer and say, hey, women are oppressed by men. Maybe we should do something about that. Then you go in another layer and it's like, women are oppressed by men. Men are the enemy. You go in another layer. Women are oppressed by men. They are the enemy. So what should we do about it? And that is what we're seeing here. But also a few layers deeper in, gay men are men. What do we do about them? This is why you will see feminists online actually attacking trans men. We had quite a famous cutting of a tweet from ages ago where somebody was saying that they hate all men. Somebody else said, "We're even trans men," and they basically replied, "Did I stutter?" And this is essentially what we're dealing with here, where maleness itself is bad. This is the basis of toxic masculinity. They are saying that we have to destroy maleness and uplift women. But femininity is also bad because femininity traps you under patriarchy. Therefore, we have to destroy femininity. Therefore, the genders essentially have to switch roles. So men have to become women, women have to become men. And this is, I think, why the trans thing's so popular, when in fact it should just be like a support group, essentially. It shouldn't be a political thing. I mean, we've had trans people on here before, and they've said very similar things. It's not supposed to be a political identity. In fact, a trans person's favourite thing would simply be if they were the gender they wanted to be, completely normal, nothing distinctive about them, they just want that. But as a political identity, they are valuable because they are way up the intersectional charts, and so they have great power in the caste system, which is how they are distributing these points. So men are at the bottom of the caste system. Men, cis men, heterosexual men, they are the untouchables. And if you know caste systems, that means you literally can't touch them. Like, they are literally, what's the word? Ritualistically unclean is the closest I can get. And essentially, if you touch anything related to them, you have to wash your hands. ritualistically, not actually wash your hands. Like, it's not a soap and water thing, it's a ritualistic cleansing of their social class from you. And what they essentially do is they'll have, like, if they in Japan, basically this was the merchant classes went to the emperor and said, hey, we're at the bottom, why are we at the bottom, we need some untouchables around here. And so they created a new group who literally could not be touched, who were below the merchants. In our culture, feminism is saying, hey, women are like, they're framing women as the untouchable class, but they're saying that they have to put men underneath women and make them the untouchable class, because essentially it's a tribalistic honor thing, and they want the power that comes from being, having the face of being victims, because victimhood, for people who are automatically given empathy, which is mostly women and children and Labradors, for people who are given empathy, victimhood is a form of strength.
I was just going to answer. Yeah, I was just going to answer Sensei rather than trying to type out a long-winded message, because I'd said in the chat that TERF ideology is based in misandry. Basically, if you listen to the things that TERFs will say,
I concur this 100% as a trans person.
It's trans women are dangerous because they're biological men. This is essentially it. So they're saying that men are dangerous. Therefore, this is basic misandry. That, there is no there is no way a man can be safe, to all intents and purposes. So when feminists tried using the term trans misogyny to try to make it part of their idea, part of their whole ideology and what have you, but no, TERF thinking, TERF ideology is based in misandry. It's based in the hatred of men, which is why, for the most part, both in a good and bad way, trans men are pretty much left alone. For the most part,
They're told that they're lost sisters.
Yeah. But it's nowhere near as bad as it is to be, or for trans women who are really, really getting it at the moment, and the TERFs will not leave off. So I hope, Sensei, that answers your question.
There is a little bit of, I think there's actually two groups of TERFs. One of them is, as you say, and the other one is more the sort of gender essentialists. They are fighting against gender constructivism, and there is such a blurry overlap between those two groups that I wouldn't want to try and unpick them. But I do think that there are some who are like, they just don't buy into like transgenderism at all as a concept, or maybe they buy into it as a mental issue, but they say no, women can't be men, men can't be women, and they just cut it off there, and they don't want to have like one of the things they get angry at is trans women competing in women's sports, or they don't get angry at trans men competing in men's sports, but trans women competing in women's sports, they don't like that at all. That's something that is at the moderate end. I think there is a much more extreme end where they will class trans men as gender traitors, and they class trans women as usurpers. And what these people tend to think is that men are essentially invading women's spaces, and they're doing it deliberately. This is building on top of that mild end of the ideology. So this is a few levels up, or a few levels in, if you want to use the mystery terminology. you are essentially building on top of that, and you're saying that men want to invade women's spaces. They want to get into women's prisons. How do they do that? They use the trans thing to usurp it, and it's unfortunate that a few like celebrities and people like that have actually done this. There's like that guy who identified as a woman, broke the woman powerlifting record, and then identified as a man again, essentially. And it's that sort of thing feeds into that idea that men are trying to invade women's spaces. But
Yeah,
actually,
that was Zuby, and he did it basically to take the absolute rise out of the women can be anything they want crowd. So yeah, he that wasn't done in any kind of serious way. He did it basically to prove a point.
yeah, no, I don't think that was malicious, but it is stuff that gets used by these sorts of people. This is why we have to be very careful about what we say online. We have to be careful that we don't use arguments that can be cropped out of context and then pasted up on Reddit. And it's like, look at the awful woman haters. They're using, or look at the awful racists, because one of the things that MRAs are very, very prone to do is using the substitute black for men idea. And it's a very good idea until you realize that MRAs will just copy paste the other person's comment without saying anything additional, and then they will just change men to black and post it, and that allows very easy screenshotting. And these people don't care about reality, they care about their narrative. So they'll take your screenshot, they'll post it everywhere, and context will not matter.
That's why I was very, very careful in the chat to point out I was being partially sarcastic in what I said, because I posted TERFs are on the right side of history, don't you know? And I just also pointed out TERF ideology is based in misandry. So yeah, I know what these people can be like online.
Yeah.
They're ridiculous.
No, if you
Lou's
see
had
the
experience
kind
of this.
if you see the kind of hate that they direct at trans women, it's always based on their perception of them as men.
Yeah, which is why I say it's all misandry.
Well, I mean, that's how hate in general works. You can't hate someone without having a perception of them. And your perception of them determines what you hate, because hate is simply dictated by what you love, right? They're dichotomies, right, that you can't remove from each other.
Anyway, have we hashed out this topic sufficiently? I'm just wondering, as it's 9 o'clock now, if everyone's happy that we've finished this. I can go into free talk time if anyone likes.
Yeah, go for it, Ma.
Okay then. Thank you everyone for coming. This has been the Men's Human Rights Discord live stream. We're here every week on Saturday now. We are at the new time of 8 p.m. UK time. Please check the announcements for the actual time, because the event system here will tell you the time in your local area, and if it doesn't, then any links we have to live stream waiting rooms will contain the time they actually starts. Thank you all for coming. If you have a topic you'd like to suggest, please give it to me or one of the staff, or suggest it right after the stream so we can get right to making the thumbnail. Thank you very much. Bye.